What's the most elaborate or creative revenge you've ever pulled off? The birthday cake sabotage. I had a coworker, Linda, who was constantly mean-spirited and condescending toward me. For her birthday, she threw a huge office party and bragged about how everyone would bring gifts just for her. I decided to bake a cake for her, but with a twist, I spent hours creating a cake that looked perfect on the outside, but had a layer of extremely spicy chili filling in the middle. Everyone at the office laughed when she cut the cake and took the first bite. She sputtered, grabbed water, and everyone got to see her temporarily humbled. It was subtle, funny, and harmless, but it was the perfect creative revenge, the kind that required planning precision and a touch of humor. The fake promotion email. I had a rival at work, Tom, who loved to mock me publicly. One day, he bragged that he'd get promoted before I ever could. I got creative. Using my knowledge of the email system, I sent a fake internal congratulations email to his inbox, making it look like HR had mistakenly announced his promotion. He ran around the office in pure joy for about 5 minutes before realizing something was off. The reactions from colleagues were priceless confusion laughter, and the sheer horror on his face when he figured it out. He underestimated my ability to plan and execute something harmlessly devious, and the satisfaction I felt. Immense. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to hurt anyone, it just needs to make them squirm. The misleading Craigslist ad. There was a guy in my neighborhood who constantly mocked me for being too uptight about my car. He kept parking too close to mine, scratching the bumper slightly, and then pretending nothing happened. I decided to have some fun. I posted a Craigslist ad advertising a rare collectible car in my driveway for sale, completely fake with an absurdly high price. Within a day, he had called driven by to see it and tried negotiating. I acted mysterious and pretended to be interested in serious buyers only. Watching him waste an entire afternoon for nothing, getting frustrated at my unshakable stoicism. It was satisfying, subtle, and creative. He underestimated my ability to play mind games. The office supply trick. I once worked with someone, Sarah, who had a habit of borrowing my pens, staplers, and notebooks without asking. I got creative. Over a few weeks, I replaced every item she stole with identical but slightly defective items pens that leaked staplers that jammed notebooks with missing pages. Every time she tried to use them, she became increasingly frustrated. She had no idea it was me, and she eventually stopped touching my stuff entirely. The best part, she was convinced it was just bad luck or a curse on her desk. I didn't confront her. I let her suffer in mild escalating confusion. Revenge can be subtle, quiet, and hilariously elaborate if you plan it carefully. The social media prank. A friend of mine, Jake, constantly bragged on social media about how much cooler he was than everyone else. I got creative. I created a fake, humorous fan account dedicated to adoring Jake in increasingly ridiculous ways, posting memes, fan art, and fake quotes. Within a week, mutual friends were tagging him in the posts, jokingly asking if he had approved them. Jake went full panic mode, trying to delete the post and figure out who was behind it. I eventually revealed myself, and the mix of relief, embarrassment, and awe on his face was priceless. It required planning subtlety and a flair for dramatic timing, the perfect creative revenge. The library book heist. Back in college, there was a guy in my dorm, let's call him Derek, who constantly mocked my study habits. He'd steal my books, spill coffee on my notes, and laugh when I complained. I decided to teach him a lesson creatively. Over several weeks, I meticulously misplaced some of his favorite textbooks in the library. But here's the twist. I didn't just return them to the shelves, I hid them in random sections, rewrote the labels, and even created tiny notes inside suggesting bizarre fake references he supposedly needed. Derek spent hours searching, getting frustrated and asking librarians for help, looking completely lost. By the time he realized it was a prank, he had missed an entire week of studying. I never got caught, and the satisfaction of watching someone who underestimated my planning skills slowly descend into mild chaos, priceless. The phantom parking spot. I had a coworker, Angela, who always took the closest parking spot to the building, despite arriving later than everyone else. She'd brag, I always get the best spots. No one can beat me. I got creative. I made temporary removable signs claiming certain spots were reserved for a new executive who apparently had just joined the company me. Every morning, she arrived to find her favorite spot mysteriously taken. She tried to negotiate with HR and coworkers, only to be ignored because the signs looked official. I kept the ruse going for weeks. She had no idea I was behind it, and watching her increasingly irritated morning routines muttering under her breath, while I casually strolled in from the next spot over. Absolute perfection, creativity, pull subtlety, ultimate revenge. The fake job opportunity. Years ago, I had a friend, let's call him Mark, who constantly boasted about his ability to get jobs for people, yet openly mocked my ambitions. I got creative. I sent him a fake LinkedIn message from a recruiter about a high-paying, perfect job that matched his field. I wrote a fully fabricated job description, company name, and interview details. Mark went all in researching the company, rehearsing answers, and getting ready for an interview that didn't exist. On the day he was supposed to interview, I casually sent him a follow-up email revealing it was a prank. The mix of shock, embarrassment, and awe was unbelievable. He never underestimated me again. Creative revenge can be harmless, but leave someone speechless. The subtle roommate sabotage. I once had a roommate, Lisa, who always mocked my cooking, claiming I was terrible and would ruin everything. I decided to play a long game prank. Over a few weeks, I started accidentally mixing ingredients in her meals, nothing dangerous, just slightly off flavors that she blamed on herself. She gradually stopped criticizing me as her meals became mysteriously inconsistent while mine were always perfect. The ultimate twist one night. I cooked a full dinner for both of us, perfectly balanced, and she admitted genuinely that my meals were better than hers. She had been subtly undermined by her own habits and overconfidence, and I watched her humility emerge without confrontation. Revenge done creatively doesn't need anger. Sometimes it's about proving someone wrong in a slow, clever way. The conference prank. I had a colleague, Brad, who always bragged about his connections at industry conferences and constantly made me feel incompetent. I decided to get creative. Before a major conference, I secretly created a fake list of VIP networking sessions that he thought were exclusive. I even printed fake invitations and sent them through a personal email. Brad spent the day running around trying to get into rooms that didn't exist, asking organizers why he wasn't allowed in. I quietly attended the real sessions, connected with top people in the field, and even got invited to a private dinner by key executives. Brad later tried to claim he had inside info, only for everyone to laugh and explain what really happened. Watching someone who underestimated your ingenuity scramble while you quietly succeed. Absolute euphoria. The email chain masterpiece. I had a coworker, Vanessa, who loved to micromanage everyone and subtly undermine me in front of the team. She once forwarded a completely innocent draft of my work to the entire department, twisting it to make me look incompetent. I decided to get creative. I crafted a long, intricate email chain pretending to clarify an absurdly detailed, completely fake process that only she could follow. Every step was slightly ridiculous, involving random spreadsheets, obscure formulas, and unnecessary approvals. Vanessa tried to follow it, panicked, and sent frantic emails to the team asking for help. Meanwhile, I quietly copied the original draft correctly, and everyone in the department eventually realized that the chaos was entirely her doing. By the end, she had embarrassed herself without me ever pointing a finger. The slow unraveling of her composure was absolute perfection. The fake event planner. My friend turned nemesis, Emily, always mocked my inept party skills. One day, she invited me to help with a massive surprise party for another friend, knowing I would be pushed into logistical chaos. I decided to turn it around. I secretly signed her up for a professional event planner course under the guise of helping her get certified, which I knew would eat her schedule for weeks. Meanwhile, I organized the actual party flawlessly with friends she had ignored for invitations. She showed up, exhausted and confused, to see everyone praising the event orchestrated entirely without her. her smirk vanished, replaced by stunned recognition that I had outmaneuvered her. Creative revenge doesn't need aggression. It's about precision and timing. The grocery store swap. In my first apartment, I had a neighbor, a guy named Phil, who loved to borrow my groceries and pretend he didn't. I decided to get inventive. I started subtly swapping his items with harmless but absurd substitutes: sugar with salt, soda with sparkling water, and orange juice with diluted juice. He complained about weird taste repeatedly, but I always feigned ignorance. One day, he angrily confronted me, only for me to reveal the swaps every item was safe. But he had underestimated my attention to detail and subtle cunning. His embarrassment in front of neighbors combined with the satisfaction of proving I could outsmart him quietly for weeks. Absolutely priceless. The office plant conspiracy. I once worked with a manager, Greg, who constantly criticized my attention to detail. One day, he took it further, claiming my office plants were poorly maintained despite me watering them daily. I decided to be creative. I secretly swapped the labels of his desk plants, added slightly fake care instructions, and even created a small spreadsheet tracking their watering schedule. Over the next month, he struggled to keep up, forgetting waterings, over-fertilizing, and generally looking incompetent, while I quietly maintained mine perfectly. Eventually, he asked for advice on office plant care from me. Watching someone who underestimated your subtle cleverness stumble all while you stay calm and collected utter satisfaction. The phantom tech support. A guy I worked with, Sam, loved to claim he was the tech genius of our small company. He constantly mocked my tech skills. One day, he broke the office printer and blamed me. I decided to get creative. I set up a fake tech support hotline under a burner email, sending him subtle, cryptic instructions over a few days to fix the printer. Every step was slightly misleading, making him run in circles. He started panicking, sending desperate emails to other coworkers for advice, all while I quietly restored the printer properly without a trace. When the office realized the printer was working again, he had completely embarrassed himself, all because he underestimated me. Creative revenge done subtly is unforgettable. The fake job reference. I had a former coworker, Lisa, who constantly belittled me and told everyone I wasn't capable of handling leadership roles. When she got a promotion I wanted, I decided to have a little fun. I created a fake LinkedIn profile for a recruiter and sent her a glowing reference email praising her work ethic in completely ridiculous, over-the-top terms that were obviously fake once she read them. She forwarded it to her manager, expecting to impress, but the manager immediately called her out. The profile didn't exist. She looked completely dumbfounded in front of the team. I never revealed myself. The satisfaction came from watching someone who underestimated your subtle cunning trip over their own ego. The conference badge switch. At a professional conference, there was a guy, Daniel, who constantly flaunted his networking skills and mocked mine. I decided to get creative. Before the big networking event, I swapped our badges so that when people approached him, they assumed he was an intern, completely reversing his bragging. Meanwhile, people came to me thinking I was the seasoned professional. Daniel spent the night confused, embarrassed, and desperately trying to correct everyone while I quietly collected contacts, opportunities, and praise. By the end of the evening, he realized he had underestimated me entirely. Watching him flounder while I quietly thrived, perfect revenge. The mysterious package. I had a roommate, Mike, who constantly borrowed my stuff without asking and mocked my careful habits. I decided to turn it into a creative revenge. I sent him a series of small, mysterious packages, all harmless, but each containing slightly cryptic notes, referencing inside jokes he didn't remember making. Each package arrived at random times, leaving him paranoid and trying to figure out who was behind it. Eventually, he started questioning his memory and thought someone was pranking him on purpose. I never revealed it was me. Weeks of suspense, confusion, and mild paranoia. Later, he had completely underestimated me. The satisfaction was quiet, personal, and absolute. The calendar chaos. I had a coworker, Rachel, who always took credit for my work and publicly dismissed my contributions. I decided to get subtle and creative. I carefully swapped a few of her calendar appointments with ones that didn't exist: fake client calls, imaginary team meetings, and duplicated events. She spent an entire week scrambling, showing up to empty conference rooms, calling non-existent clients, and apologizing repeatedly to co-workers. Meanwhile, I quietly kept track of real deadlines and outperformed her at every turn. Watching someone's ego collapse from minor but perfectly executed chaos is far more satisfying than any direct confrontation. The phantom alarm. I had a neighbor, Tom, who always complained about my habits while constantly being passive-aggressive. One night, I decided to be creative. I installed a harmless motion sensor alarm outside my apartment that triggered randomly. Over a week, Tom started assuming someone was sneaking around at night, getting increasingly paranoid. He mentioned it to other neighbors, who were slightly amused but couldn't figure out what was going on. I never confessed, but the fear and confusion I had subtly engineered, all because he underestimated my ability to plan and execute a harmless prank, was deeply satisfying. The art exhibit swap. I had a classmate in college, Jenna, who constantly mocked my artwork, saying it was childish and amateurish. She had a senior exhibit coming up, and I decided to get creative. I spent weeks secretly creating a set of nearly identical pieces to hers, but with subtle, humorous alterations, a tiny mustache here, an odd shadow there, and swapped them with the originals during setup when she wasn't looking. The exhibit opened, and critics began praising the new interpretations, highlighting the humor and cleverness, all while she thought it was her original work. The mix of awe and confusion on her face, realizing that someone had outsmarted her subtly yet publicly, was absolute perfection. Revenge doesn't have to be cruel. It can be clever, quiet, and humiliating in the most artful way. The phantom text messages. A friend of mine, Alex, loved to play mind games and constantly mocked my paranoia. He was the kind of person who thrived on making others doubt themselves. I decided to turn the tables. I created an anonymous burner account and sent him cryptic text messages about being watched, harmless but just strange enough to make him question reality. Over 2 weeks, he became increasingly paranoid, checking doors, locks, and cameras, all while trying to figure out who was behind it. One day, he accused another mutual friend, and the chaos was so perfect that it became a running joke for months. He underestimated my patience, planning, and creativity, and the slow unraveling of his confidence was utterly satisfying. The conference room switcheroo. At work, a rival named Peter always took credit for projects I had led, claiming he was the real brains behind the team. I decided to have some fun. Before an important client meeting, I subtly switched his presentation materials with an old draft filled with intentionally humorous placeholder text charts of cats versus dogs, pie charts labeled with random numbers, and slides that didn't make sense. Peter went into the room confidently, only to start presenting nonsense. The clients tried to stifle laughter while I quietly prepared with the correct materials, stepped in, and delivered the presentation flawlessly. The look of sheer horror and disbelief on his face while I saved the day was pure, satisfying revenge. The elaborate roommate prank war. My college roommate Sam thought he could outsmart me in pranks. He constantly mocked me for being too cautious and easy to fool. I decided to escalate. Over a month, I orchestrated an elaborate prank war that included fake spiders, sticky notes everywhere, rearranged furniture, and mysterious music playlists that played at odd hours. Each prank was subtle enough to avoid immediate detection but cumulative enough to drive him mad. One night, he finally broke down and admitted defeat. The satisfaction wasn't just in each prank, but in orchestrating an elaborate, multi-layered revenge that required patience, creativity, and attention to detail, all while remaining calm and collected. The fake award ceremony. Finally, there was a colleague, Mia, who constantly belittled me at work and told everyone I couldn't handle management responsibilities. I decided to turn her arrogance against her. I created a fake internal award nomination, complete with an official email and a small staged ceremony. Mia was ecstatic, expecting recognition. On the day of the ceremony, I revealed that the award was actually a humorous, most overconfident employee joke, presented in a way that everyone in the office could appreciate. Mia's face went from excitement to humiliation, but it wasn't cruel, it was clever, elaborate, and entirely deserved. She had underestimated my creativity, and the long game planning made it one of the most satisfying moments I've ever orchestrated. The social media reputation reversal. I had a coworker, Martin, who constantly mocked me in private group chats, saying I wasn't career material and that my ideas were laughable. He thought I didn't notice, but I quietly collected screenshots over months. Then I decided to get creative. I built an anonymous social media account that praised my work publicly, highlighting accomplishments he had laughed at. I subtly tagged mutual colleagues, our clients, and even higher-ups in a few posts. Within weeks, my reputation completely flipped. I was now known as a rising star, innovative and hardworking. Martin tried to continue mocking me in person, but everyone around him was already aware of my achievements, and he looked petty and insecure. The satisfaction of orchestrating such a subtle, long-term, socially strategic revenge? Incredible. He had underestimated not just me, but my ability to turn the narrative in my favor without confrontation. The phantom meeting hijack. I had a colleague, Janet, who constantly tried to overshadow my contributions during meetings. She would steer discussions, talk over me, and even misquote things I said. I decided to orchestrate an elaborate revenge. I secretly set up a recurring calendar meeting with key decision makers under the guise of a strategy brainstorming session, but I left Janet out. When she realized she had missed critical information multiple times, she panicked, trying to catch up in frantic emails and calls. Meanwhile, I delivered my ideas flawlessly in the meetings she wasn't invited to, earning praise from higher-ups. She realized too late that her arrogance and assumption that she could control every meeting had backfired spectacularly. Watching someone who underestimated your patience, foresight, and creativity scramble quietly while you thrive. Pure satisfaction. The office coffee conspiracy. My coworker Phil constantly mocked me for being too careful and uptight about small things at work. He would steal my favorite coffee pods and act like it was funny. I decided to pull a creative revenge. I gradually replaced the pods he loved with decaf, then started subtly labeling them with strange codes, leaving him to decipher which was which. Over 2 weeks, he became increasingly paranoid about which coffee was real, obsessively checking every pod before use and complaining about weak coffee to anyone who would listen. I never confessed, but I watched him struggle while my coffee remained perfect. By the end of it, he had completely underestimated my attention to detail and subtle cleverness, and it felt like a small, satisfying victory every morning. The phantom freelancer. I had a client in my freelance work, Karen, who constantly tried to undervalue my skills and sneakily bring in others to replace me. She thought I was too inexperienced to manage a major project. I decided to get creative. I set up an alternate email address posing as a highly recommended freelancer with fake testimonials and portfolios. I applied for her own project, claiming she needed me as an intermediary. Karen spent days trying to negotiate with this mysterious freelancer, only to realize it was me orchestrating the entire thing. I delivered the project flawlessly, collecting both praise and payment directly, while she realized she had been completely outsmarted. Watching someone underestimate your ingenuity and then scramble helplessly? Absolutely satisfying. The library prank war redux. Back in college, there was a guy, Greg, who constantly mocked my study habits, claiming I was obsessive and overthinking everything. I decided to create a long-term, intricate prank that would quietly teach him a lesson. I started leaving tiny, cryptic notes in the library, suggesting hidden books that contained secret study hacks. Greg became obsessed, running around the library hunting for non-existent volumes, asking librarians for help, and even recruiting friends. Meanwhile, I quietly aced every exam and paper without interference. The culmination was when he finally realized the books didn't exist and looked completely bewildered. A combination of embarrassment, admiration, and awe. Revenge doesn't always need confrontation. Sometimes it's about long-term planning, patience, and creativity to make someone question their own assumptions about you. The elevator prank. I had a coworker, Phil, who loved showing off his superior knowledge about building security and elevators. He would constantly lecture anyone who used the elevator wrong or pressed too many buttons. I decided to get creative. I spent a week subtly adjusting the elevator buttons and sensors so that the lights would flicker in strange patterns but still work normally. Phil started insisting it was broken and tried explaining it to building maintenance, who tested everything and found nothing. Every day he would lecture, argue, and panic, slightly convinced he had caused the malfunction, while the rest of us quietly rode the elevator in perfect comfort. Watching someone so arrogant slowly unravel over something I orchestrated subtly but elaborately was pure satisfaction. The art class revenge. In my painting class, a fellow student, Julia, constantly mocked my techniques and said I'd never make it professionally. I decided to get creative. I secretly replicated her style in an exaggerated, humorous way and submitted it anonymously for a class critique. The instructor praised it as an innovative take on her own style, completely flipping the script. Julia's face went pale as she realized everyone thought the piece was hers, and I stayed completely anonymous. The slow, clever subversion of her confidence was much more satisfying than confronting her outright a long-game subtle and perfectly executed revenge. The phantom call. I had a roommate, Mike, who would constantly prank me, hide things, and blame me for lost items. I decided to get creative. I set up a phone line that would ring randomly in his room with no caller ID, playing faint, harmless noises, a whisper, a laugh, a hello at odd hours. Over 2 weeks, he became increasingly paranoid, convinced someone was watching him. He started locking doors, checking cameras, and losing sleep. I never revealed myself, but the careful, slow unraveling of his confidence over a harmless but intricate setup was absolute perfection. Creative revenge doesn't need confrontation. It's about subtle chaos and long-term satisfaction. The lost proposal. I worked with a colleague, Nathan, who constantly belittled my professional capabilities. He once accidentally misplaced a critical proposal I had drafted and claimed I wasn't detail-oriented enough to notice. I decided to turn it around creatively. I secretly created a backup copy of the proposal, improved it, and sent it to upper management under a slightly altered title that still credited me. When the proposal impressed everyone, Nathan tried to claim partial credit, but I had meticulously documented everything: drafts, emails, timestamps. He was left speechless, realizing he had underestimated me completely. The satisfaction came from the slow, undeniable proof of competence, while he fumbled helplessly to save face. The birthday gift sabotage reversed. A friend, Rachel, constantly tried to one-up me every year on birthdays. One year, she went overboard, giving an extravagant gift and making me feel small in comparison. I decided to get creative. I forgot her birthday, but secretly orchestrated a surprise that involved all our mutual friends, creating a scavenger hunt filled with inside jokes, clues, and a final personalized gift that outshined her efforts in a thoughtful, emotional way. She had bragged about her gift, but mine ended up being more memorable, creative, and personally meaningful. Watching her stunned expression, realizing she had underestimated the power of planning, thoughtfulness, and subtle cleverness was deeply satisfying. I don't know if I'll ever top what I did with Darren, my ex, but if someone had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said revenge is stupid. But then he crossed a line that left me plotting like a villain in one of those cheesy thrillers. Except the only thing I had going for me was patience, boredom, and an overactive imagination. It all started with something small. I won't go into the early gaslighting stuff because that's not why I started plotting. This was personal. He had spent months making me look like I was losing my mind, moving things, denying conversations, lying about events. And the worst part was watching everyone around me believe him because I couldn't prove otherwise. I was a ghost in my own life, invisible, doubted, and exhausted. I wanted him to understand exactly what that felt like. So I began with research. I had to know everything: his habits, his schedule, his weaknesses. I knew he had a thing for his precious smart home system, the one that controlled lights, music, doors, even coffee brewing. That was my first target. One night, I swapped the hub's firmware with a glitchy beta version I'd found online. It looked completely normal, but I rigged it to malfunction at random intervals, doors refusing to lock, lights flickering at 3 a.m., music blasting classical when he thought he had jazz. At first, he blamed himself. Maybe I installed it wrong. But the incidents kept escalating. I watched from my small rented apartment across town not because I was stalking him, but because I wanted him to feel the creeping sense of unreliability that had haunted me. Then came the emails. I created a burner account and started sending him cryptic messages. "You forgot again. Do you remember last time?" Nothing overtly threatening, just little seeds. He started questioning his memory. He even asked his own therapist, "Am I losing it?" And when I overheard the response, the gentle, validating concern, I smiled. He was starting to feel exactly how I had felt for months. I didn't stop there. I swapped his sugar with salt, moved his gym bag to the roof of his car, hid his favorite shoes. Every tiny disruption was precise enough to make him doubt himself, but never enough for anyone else to notice. He documented incidents in a notebook. He cross-checked with his smart home logs. Nothing added up. That notebook became a kind of shrine to his unraveling. The masterstroke, though, came during the holiday party he was hosting. He invited everyone, friends, family, coworkers, the whole world he cared about. I secretly rigged the video system so that slideshows and home movies displayed altered images, him doing ridiculous things, fake screenshots of conversations edited to look like he had said things he never said. It was subtle enough to be plausible, but clearly off. By the time people started exchanging confused glances, he couldn't explain anything. He stammered. He sweat. He laughed nervously, and everyone looked at him like he had lost touch with reality. I didn't gloat in person. That was the trick. I let the chaos simmer. He tried to recover control, sending frantic messages blaming technical glitches. But the damage was done. The people he thought were loyal, they started questioning him quietly. The ones he thought would defend him, they started avoiding him. Slowly, I watched the social dominoes fall. By the time the dust settled, Darren was isolated, anxious, and constantly second-guessing himself, not humiliated in a single public moment that would have been too obvious, but subtly dismantled in every facet of his life. And me, I didn't celebrate. I just let it exist as a quiet personal justice. The beauty of it was the patience, the planning, the psychological artistry. Revenge isn't about fury or confrontation, it's about precision. Watching someone who thrived on manipulation experience the same creeping doubt they inflicted on others is oddly poetic. I will say this, I never told a soul what I did. No one knew. Darren never confronted me, never suspected a thing. The revenge was mine alone. A personal catharsis that didn't rely on drama witnesses or spectacle. I let karma do its work quietly, methodically, and creatively. And when I finally moved on from the obsession, I realized something strange. I didn't even hate him anymore. I just admired the symmetry of it all. It was elaborate, it was careful, and it worked better than I ever could have imagined.